What's up, guys? Welcome back to AniPeeps, place for all things anime and manga. I am your host today, Mighty Mo, and today I've got one of the boys with me, Boggs. How we doing, brother?
I'm good. Pretty excited about what we'll be talking about today. It's pretty fitting that just you and I, because I think it's just a show that both of us have seen. So, yeah,
Yes,
super excited.
sir. Yes, sir. As Boggs alluded to, this is one actually he put me on to, so I'm excited to kind of finally. We've talked about it before, but talk about it some
hmm
more in depth. But today's show is Zombieland Saga. It's where zombies meet idols in a unlikely crossover, but ended up working actually super well. So I mean,
Uh, great crossover in the genres.
yeah. And I think this was my first like real experience with an idol show as well. And
Okay, okay.
we'll kind of talk about how I felt about it at first and then as it transitioned later on as well. But brief synopsis, the main character in the middle there, Sakura, she was a high school student aspiring to be a model, or not a model, an idol. She really looked up to a bunch of idols, and this show starts with her singing in the mirror, holding her application, running out the door, talking about how great of a day it's going to be, and she just gets hit by good old good old truck goon.
Immediately too, kind of out of nowhere.
Yeah. So this is I was it was funny too because this was like, oh, this is where the OG truck coon comes from. But
Yeah, and it just happened so fast. This is like the best Truck-kun meme too.
this happens like within a minute, maybe 2 minutes of the
Yeah, like
show
very
starting.
very quick, very quick.
Yeah. But so she dies, and 10 years later, she gets brought back to life along with six other lovely ladies by their manager, Kotaro. And he decides that he's going to start a idol group to save the prefecture of Saga. And so that's a super basic premise of the show. We'll get into introducing each of the girls now. So,
Yeah, 'cause pretty much aside from the premise, right? It kind of follows like standard idol show with the zombie mix, obviously, and
mhm,
just the idols kind of just learning songs, learning the dance, and some antics in between, but eventually trying to make it up, gain popularity to have like the big concert that the idols dream for.
yeah. Well, first up, we've got again the main MC that the story follows, Sakura. She's referred to as Zombie One. Like I said, she was probably the most recent person to die of all the
hmm
girls. Um, died and resurrected 10 years later. And she's also like the first one that wakes up and is a conscious zombie within the show.
Yeah.
Following her, we have Saki. She was a delinquent from like the 90s um, that died in a tragic, tragic event as a delinquent and comes back. Kind of our
Those
classic.
two. Yeah, those two images really kind of give a good description of kind of how she is. She's not like mean, but she's definitely hard exterior type, like you
Yeah,
said, Dylan.
very strong personality and makes for a great leader as well. So
hmm
leader, self-proclaimed leader of the group, and goes on to do a great job. Next on was I. She was actually also an idol formerly in her life. The lead performer of the group Iron Frill, which is actually the group that Sakura was a really big fan of. Um,
hmm
and she got struck by lightning mid performance.
She's like she's almost yeah, no. Yeah, I didn't know if you want to keep that for later, but yeah. Um pretty wild way to go, but she kind of reminds me of almost like I from Oshinoko kind of like she was a legend at least in her time as
Mhm.
like the front uh the go-to idol. So
Yeah, and I think she's really the only one in this group as well that's like a classically a real idol, especially in modern day. Moving on to Junko, she was the fourth member, but she was a Showa solo idolist. So
Mm-hmm.
a little bit of different experience. She did a lot of actually, I guess before her first real debut concert, she also ended up passing, but much more of a shy, reserved character, kind of being a good symbolism of kind of the women from the Showa era. But
Mm-hmm. And pretty much Junko, which we see here, and I, which we saw earlier, are probably the two with the biggest experience in
mhm,
regards to at least singing, and then I obviously more so on the idol side. But yeah, definitely the two, um, one with a previous kind of experience slash career with the idol business.
yeah. Next up, we had Lily. Can't have an idol group without your lowly. Um, and there's
Mm-hmm.
a interesting twist with her, which we'll probably get into a little bit
All
more
right, next,
detail
yeah,
later. But super cute, super cute, bubbly character. She was a child prodigy actor as a kid, and we'll save her death discussion for later because that was pretty comedic
yeah, I
in how
think
she
you,
passed too.
yeah, and I think you kind of spilled it in there with one of the terms you used. So moving on.
And then next up was Yugiri. She was a very high profile courtesan in like the 19th century, if I'm not mistaken, like Meiji period. Um,
Yeah, way back.
yeah. And so she actually has some history tied to Saga as well that gets delved into in
Her
season
backstory.
two of Zombieland Saga and in her backstory, which is pretty cool, but she's, like kind of the adult, elegant beauty of the group.
Hmm.
And last but certainly not least, we have Tai Yamada, just the
Squid loving zombie.
she is
She's a
just pure
anomaly.
zombie. Yeah.
Yeah, she's an anomaly. We don't get too much of her past or her background, and she's one of the only one, as I alluded to by saying zombie. She's the one that kind of stays like a zombie and doesn't kind of regain her consciousness from her previous life. So
hmm
unless,
Yeah.
unless, but yeah, we could dive into that later.
Super, super great character as well. But and then obviously, last but certainly not least, nope, that's a little spoiler. We got our boy Kotaro, the manager of the group, the necromancer, the genius responsible for bringing all the ladies back.
And very eccentric character in of his own, and very unorthodox method that he goes through as a manager, but definitely a big part of adding humor to the show. Absolutely hilarious character, and yeah.
Yeah, he's a crazy character, man. It's in some ways he kind of reminds me of Reagan from Mob Psycho a little bit.
Yeah, like the slightly exploitative nature of him, even though like Reagan, he definitely is a good person deep down, but no,
hmm
I totally get I get where you're coming from with that.
Yeah, has his like clutch moments, but also has some of his ridiculous moments as well.
And
But
he goes through some ups and downs, and during his downs, my boy down bad, so
he's down so bad, man. But yeah, um, where do you
yeah, I
wanna?
guess that's the character. Yeah,
Yeah.
I guess I think like the big reasons why I love this show so much is I really do love the zombie and idol kind of crossover with this series, just big fan of like zombies in general, but I really like the zombie character designs when they're in their zombie form. Um and yeah, like I said earlier with the characters is that they do a really good job of kind of mixing the humor with obviously like the idol aspect of it, but within I think the idol genre they really go not overboard, but they definitely do a great job of the comedy aspect of it and keeping you entertained and kind of not being too generic in regards to the genre.
Yeah. And I think that was like the first thing that surprised me. I thought from the first couple episodes that this was kind of going to be just a parody of the idol
Mhm.
genre. It was just going to be
Mhm.
a lot of gags, a lot of humor, like, but they actually, every girl's going through so much. It turned into so much more than I really thought it was going to be. You're able to really connect with the characters and fall in love
And
with
we
them.
actually get an idol show too, you know? Like we actually get some good bangers out of it. And despite being pretty like you said, maybe like parody slash comedy centric, they really do a good job on the opposite end of the idol aspect of the show. Uh what say like maybe like Love Live would do, you know?
Mhm. Yeah, and I think like the only downfall to this show, I think, is just some of the like the concert scenes. Like you can kind of already see with this one is it is very CGI'd.
Mhm.
Their dance and their movements. It did well in some of the concert scenes, but I remember watching. I think this was like their first. They called it like guerrilla concert that they did in the park, and
Mhm.
I was like, this doesn't look super great. But
Yeah, I mean to me it didn't look great, but to me it also didn't look bad. Like uh definitely like you mentioned noticeable, but not anything to kind of give negative points towards the show, you know. And like you
mhm.
said too, when they go hard, they definitely do go hard. And honestly, at least for me, sometimes I found it, I guess like slightly funny because sometimes you get like these janky movements, but then especially with Tai, you know, she's like a very like a super zombie. So it's kind of funny watching her like dancing like kind of robotic movements, and it's pretty fitting for her at least, you know, because she's kind of still almost brainless and somehow still learns to dance and comes in clutch a lot with her funny moments within the concerts as well. But
Yeah. And speaking of Ty and, funny moments with her, I almost forgot to mention, the band name, Fran
hmm
Shushu, and that came from they were brainstorming the idea and she sneezes and kind of made some noises and
yeah,
that's how
I
they
think she
ended
got
up
like like ink in her nose or something, and yeah, ended up sneezing and came up with the name Francishu,
yeah. So even
which I
even in
like.
her
I like the name.
zombiness, she
hmm
contributes,
Yeah. But aside from like obviously, you know, we're talking idol shows, so we're gonna have a pretty female heavy cast. I think we have seven zombies among us for this series. But you know, within 2 seasons, I think they did a really good job of going in depth to each and one of them, except for Tai. She still remains a mystery. Um, but you know, it's like there's a lot of like heart-tugging moments for some of these zombies backstories. Obviously, because they're zombies, they all have died in their past, and obviously it's gonna be sad. But yeah, some of these really pull your heartstrings. Like even Lily's one was pretty sad. Um, I think to me, Yugiri's past was my favorite. Um, and yeah, she's kind of like the oldest zombie, goes from way back. But I think I remember in Yugiri's past, there's like one scene where there's like a photograph in the background, and it looks like a older picture, you know, like in that time, it's from way back too. And in that picture, there's like a character that looks like Tai. So um, it's likely
Oh,
that Tai it comes from way before, but again, still remains a mystery. But yeah, I digress. I think Yugiri's past definitely uh the one I enjoyed watching the most, but all of them had great depth and interesting paths past lives that really kind of reflect well with kind of who they are at the present as zombies.
yeah. And I think hers got the most focus too, I think she got two
Mhm.
episodes and it wasn't as much of a flashback, but more so really reliving that part of her life. So
Mhm.
yeah, that was her ending was so epic and seeing her get executed. was
Yeah.
unfortunate. But I think for me, it's probably Lily's was my favorite, just
Yeah.
because now getting into a bit of the spoiler territory, she's actually a boy, right?
Mhm.
Who had some gender dysphoria and wanted to be a girl, and she died when she grew a little bit of facial hair and died from the shock of that.
Yeah.
But was also overworked heavily, partially because of her dad and manager. And, he started kind of popping up as they were doing concerts and meet and greets. There's this giant
Yeah,
big
that
brute.
yeah, that part really hit hard when, Lily saw her dad in the because it's like I think like a big bald guy, so very easily noticeable and she kind of sees him and can't really say that I'm your kid, because obviously that would open up some wounds and she died already, so
Mm, yeah. But I mean, she got to express her feelings to him through her song to him. So
mhm.
super,
Yeah.
super good, heartfelt moment. And then, like I alluded to, her getting struck by the lightning, having to kind of relive that moment in one of their concerts, um, and fighting through it with Junko, um, with them two having their duets. That was really good as
Yeah.
well. Especially because they didn't really get along too well at first. They had very different
They had their
philosophies.
differences. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
So seeing them come together and Junko even helping her getting over that was really
Mhm.
awesome.
And I guess you know, yeah, Saki absolute badass. Her backstory was I don't think as sad as the others, but definitely still deserve a good episode that she deserved, and pretty captured well, and pretty interesting to watch kind of her past story. Cause hers was she was biking and doing like the chicken race, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Her bike exploded, and
And some of these characters' deaths are very unfortunate, but
yeah, and that one was epic too, because it was her best friend's daughter was about to do the same thing that she did,
yeah,
and engage in a chicken fight, and she took her place. And then when she came back, the mom slash her best friend slapped Saki around, and
yeah,
it kind of rekindled the mom and the daughter's relationship. So
hmm
yeah, like you said, her backstory wasn't necessarily too sad, but she was able to provide some impact to people. So,
yeah. Again, like I do want to emphasize that all these characters' backstories were really like interesting and uh really really nice to watch. So
yeah. And I thought how they did Sakura's not really backstory, but more so like character development was really
hmm
great. Again, spoiler, pretty big spoiler, but her losing her memory, towards the
yeah,
end of the first season, and thinking like I can't be an idol. Like it's kind of interesting that she was so confident at the beginning before she died that, I'm going to be an idol. This is what I want to do, to I don't think I can do this. And then goes through with it. Things are going pretty good, and as the as their performance goes on, she regains her memories and comes out even stronger than she was before. So,
yeah. Because she's one of the biggest characters that obviously like looked up to idols, really wanted to be an idol. So pretty gun ho to begin with, but when she lost or like she eventually became like very dejected and not wanting to pursue it and overcame that and gave us the final concert, which I do kind of want to talk about how crazy the final concert was with all the light beams and everything like that. Pretty out there, but was really fun to watch with the song too. I think this is the one where Ty goes ham with the drums too, which is absolute treat to watch. But yeah.
yeah. And like that's another thing too, is like they, on top of all having their own personal traumas to deal with, they're also having to deal with concealing the fact that they're zombies, which I think they did really well. A lot of like fun, unique ways that people were starting to kind of catch on a little bit. but
Hmm.
they were able to hide it. So like it was really wholesome in like towards the end when the disaster struck and they were in the like shelters and their makeup was starting to fade and they couldn't kind of hide it anymore. But the kids, kind of showed that people don't care what they look like.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah,
they like them for them and that they're performing. And I mean, part of it, they didn't believe that they're really zombies, but
yeah.
um,
But yeah, I know what you're getting at. And yeah, like I'm glad you do mention it because it does kind of that aspect does allow for some gag moments too where, like their head pops off and
mhm.
they have to like kind of play it off and all that and other times where, Kotaro has to like do the makeup for everybody and that's something he's very good at. I think in season 2 he goes to an arc where he kind of gives up and uh all that. But so they have like, I think I might be wrong, but I feel like I remember there's like one arc where they might have had to do their own makeups or something like that. I might be wrong,
And
but
yeah, and
yeah,
it just doesn't look the same. They're still kind of
yeah,
bluish. They don't look like
hmm
people, and they're
yeah,
really struggling to want to go outside and stuff. And
yeah.
yeah, and I'm so upset that I forgot to grab a picture of the two Chads that showed up for their first concert.
Oh yeah, yeah. They were like the OG fans. They become
Yeah,
the OG fans.
they were originally just metalheads there for a metal concert, and they
Hmm.
were absolutely amazed with the neck breaking head banging that the girls were able to do.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
they kept showing up. Um, went from metal fans to idol fans, and absolutely
Love to
fell in
see it.
love. Oh,
Yeah,
and so that was my arc with them as well. That was me going in a non-idol fan and just falling in love with these
became
girls,
sold.
man.
Became sold. Yeah, and I love their character designs as well. Each of them with their own kind of unique look. And yeah, I love Yugiri's hair a lot. Kind of hard to tell with this one, but she kind of has like a heart hair. But yeah,
Mm,
each of them have a very distinct look that, and they have two looks because they have their zombie form. But yeah, very big fan of that aspect too.
all Alrighty, man. I think we covered pretty much everything.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like there's still so much more that we could talk about with this show, but I think it's best if everyone goes and experiences this for themselves. It's a banger show.
It is. It is. No, Tai best girl, at least for me.
Well,
And it's like very funny and cute.
yeah.
Like like one scene where Sakura loses her memory and she thinks that Tai is crying for her, ends up being like I think she was like drooling like crazy and there's just like so much funny moments in the show, man.
Yeah.
Think one that really stands out that I remember busting a gut. It's like a random one. I forget what happened and why, but uh Sakura was crying and like she ran out of tears or something. Like she was just crying so hard and she just kept crying and like became like dried out and just got super ugly and gross. Like just 'cause she got super dehydrated from crying, but yeah. Each of the characters very distinct. Like I have two of the art books for Zombieland Saga, and it's pretty funny too because you go through the character pages and each of them have like a very cool idol signature, but Tai's is just like a fingerprint.
Mm,
Because obviously she doesn't really have like a brain, so I thought it was a pretty funny touch that
nice.
really reflects her pretty good. So
Yeah. Hey, when I come visit you soon, I'm gonna have to flip through that art book.
yeah, yeah, check it out. It's a nice one, pretty big one too.
Awesome. Well, ladies and gentlemen, that was Boggs and I's discussion of Zombieland Saga. Please do check it out. Much recommended. But be sure to like and subscribe and check out our other videos. Peace.
Peace. See ya.